Hello friends, welcome to episode 147 of Storyteller Conclave. It's a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How are we doing, Rob?
It's been a week.
It has been a week.
It's been a week. But we're here for therapy.
We're here for therapy.
So, before we get into things,
I
just wanted to say thank you everyone for supporting us. We really appreciate it. Always come to our website and check it, but the one thing I want to pause you guys on is part of the community, because we do talk about the community from time to time of other groups and individuals, both YouTube, podcasters and things like that. We've talked about Seth in the past. I've brought up How to Be a Great GM on YouTube. That's a fantastic channel. Mm-hmm. Guy Slanders is amazing at his craft. He like us, have played games. The advantage is he's also done a lot of movie work and written a lot of shows, backgrounds and stories. Most recently, I'm actually a member of his Discord as well, mm-hmm. and I discovered that he had been silent for a while because he had a tragedy in his family. But he's getting back effectively on the horse, and from our show to his show, I wanted to put out a really heartfelt sorry and our deepest condolences. Yeah. I don't know all of the details, but I know how hard that can be trying to come back from tragedy. And to put your best foot forward. I think he is doing a wonderful thing with his group, and I know he has a very supportive community on his Discord. If you get a chance, or if you're part of his Discord, I please make sure that you help support him, especially right now, because our community needs that, and we need to stay strong as a group. This isn't about capitalism, as far as I'm concerned. This is about helping everybody in the community and raising us all as a community.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. So, yes. So our hearts go out to you, Guy, and thank you for all you do for the community, and we're really sorry for your loss.
Yes. So that being said,
let's see here. I had my game last weekend.
You did.
How do you think it went?
I honestly was unsure how it was going to... From a player's perspective, I know a lot of it had to do with my character, and mm-hmm. I was interested to see where that went, and it kind of took a hard left turn with everybody else in the group, and I like, as a player, I was like, wow, okay. But at the same time, like, it works. It was
an interesting moment because you met the big bad of the story, or at least one of the big bads, mm-hmm. Presumably one of the big bads.
I mean, an antagonist.
And you met one of the prime antagonists of the storyline. Got a face to face with her for the first time.
Yeah,
and all of your very enthusiastic friends, like, it was supposed to be the face-off, your face-off with her.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Like, every single person in the group was just like, get her!
It's like,
and
go team!
And you were standing there going like, oh, I've got the magic sword. Should I come with you guys? Like...
Yeah, and the chase, I mean, I would have to say the chase mechanics, I like them. Uh-huh. I think there's definitely some tweaks to be done there just to help with some of the discomfort you were having with them.
Yeah.
And the stuff we talked about totally are good mechanic changes. I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
Because I could feel your, like, hesitation and stress about everything that was going on. There was just that edge of, like, and I know that feeling. It doesn't always sit in your head, but it was obvious to me that you weren't sweating over it or anything like that. It was just the, I should have been able to handle this faster and better.
Yeah. I'm not perfect as a storyteller. Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah. But I think in the end, everybody had a wonderful time.
Yeah.
It was a good show. Of events, and definitely it showed how fun, fast, and furious it really goes.
Yeah.
Which was wonderful to see.
It was a combat-heavy game, and I still think it came out pretty smoothly.
Considering all the stuff we got through, and that we automatically, at the end of that combat,
rolled back into good role-play.
Rolled into good role-play, and staged the next scene to jump right. Because you went in media res, effectively, for the opening, which was great. I think that worked out really well, and I think... For the most part, everybody was on board for it.
Yeah. Over planning has been a sticking point with our particular table.
Oh yeah.
And some of the people did mention that, like, I really liked you starting in media res because you literally skipped us past an hour and a half of planning.
That was totally unnecessary.
Yeah. But still kind of, gave the option of, like, okay, is there anything you guys want to have had prepared? Just let me know if there is, and it really wasn't even necessary. I think it was great. And I will say one thing about this game was that it may not have moved the plot forward a lot in and of itself, but I left the game session with my head completely aswim of what next game session is going to be like.
And that's
because
beautiful.
of the implications of what happened to this game.
Yes.
And I thought it was, like, there was some really great interaction between your character and Sean's character.
Yep.
Where you were like, I want to go punch the guy, the Archmage of the Mages Guild in the face.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's my boss.
Like, no, he's not.
I don't think I can let you do that.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a sense of good role play and feel, and I think we had an overall sense of where we were going and as a group, and then we staged what the next event is going to be, which is beautiful.
And it really, really beautifully set it up for me. So I think we all have a very clear picture of what the beginning of the next game is going to be.
Yeah,
and then there's just going to be some great storytelling from there. So
yeah, I think it'll be wonderful.
All right, so. Show topic tonight is about the child adventure genre.
Yeah.
Now, what are we talking about when we're talking about the child adventure genre? You and I both grew up in the 80s.
Very much so. Very much so.
So, like,
products of all of that.
Immediately when I think of the child adventure genre, for you and I.
Yes.
Okay.
Specifically.
For you and I, because we grew up in the 80s, Goonies is the first thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. If you dig a little farther back from that, not even by much, you've got like, to a degree, like Stand By Me was the dark edge of that.
Yes, it was. It was less supernatural, but more,
and then you had, kind of Flight of the Navigator was kind of part of that as well.
Okay.
It was the sci-fi edge of that, but it was solo. And then you had, there was the other one, where the kids built a spaceship, and I was trying to remember the name of it to look it up, and they ended up going in like a bubble and taking off and like messing with it, like their dreams were involved and things like that.
Oh, I don't know.
Like Voyagers, I think was the name of it. But again, it was a sci-fi kids show because I
was thinking Space Camp actually. Do you remember that
God, Space Camp was another great one.
Space Camp was another good one. Yeah.
Yep. That was very contemporary.
Feel
to it. Because it was during the time of the shuttle program, and and kids doing the young astronaut program.
Explorers.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Explorers, where one of the kids has a dream and draws up a bunch of stuff, and then the smart kid figures out how to turn that into a physical thing. And then they end up taking off in a spaceship, and it's like that they make themselves out of like a carnival ride and some other BS stuff, but they legitimately figure it out. And I'm like, it's those types of things that I immediately go to for child adventure. Like that's what I think of. Shibi-Jibi, your wife here in the live chat saying, what about Adventures in Babysitting? Oh, I think that's 100%. I think absolutely. I 100% agree. 100% agree. I think that is legitimate. I think it sits closer to like Masks as far as role-playing games. Yeah, sure. It sits on that edge of things. Sure. But no, I agree. I think that's fantastic. No, I think that, for those of us who didn't grow up in the 80s, who are the newer crowd looking for the pinnacle child adventure story of our age is definitely Stranger Things. Yes. I mean, and I think I really loved that Stranger Things opened with D&D. D&D. Yeah. I mean, not just because, obviously, you may have heard, but I like D&D, but I think D&D is the perfect illustration of, like, the child adventure series for me. Like, think back to when you were a kid, right? Okay, and you saw Goonies. All right, and Mikey and the gang and Chunk are going through this essentially a dungeon. Yeah. With traps and puzzles to try to get to the pirate treasure at the end of this dungeon. Meanwhile being pursued by the Fratelli gang. A band of criminals. A band of essentially brigands. Yeah. And a monster. And a monster, Sloth. Yeah. And so, you had this, like, very, almost D&D formula for it. Very much so. And I'll tell you, like,
that was very formative of my childhood, of the things I got interested in and stuff like that. And tell me that, like, when you were a kid, after you saw Goonies especially, that, like, every time you were playing out in, like, I say the woods, but, like, the little patch of trees that was near your house, you know, that wasn't paved over, that was a forest to you. You know, every stick you picked up was Excalibur.
Yeah.
Your backpack could double as a shield. And, just those types of imagination, that sort of childlike wonder and sense of adventure that, that things like Goonies, that things like Stranger Things sort of awakened in you. That you had that sort of imagination and you went on those sort of adventures when you were a kid. Maybe not to actual, like, dungeons with pirate gold, but, like, in your imagination. Yeah. You always went there.
It helped tap that level of childlike wonder and the quick acceptance of things.
Yeah.
You weren't so quick to... We aren't so quick to accept the skeptical... we are skeptical of things and we are less likely to accept them as adults now, and that creates that hubris about us stopping ourselves from stepping into that mind's eye and just jumping at things. And Goonies was a great example of that. Like, the way the parents react in that is how we see things. Yeah. And yet they were very, honest and involved and knowing that this is a thing and it could be. And there was only a few times when even the kids themselves were like, we need to stop this, This isn't real. This is dangerous, or we can't do this.
Yeah. Mikey, you're going after a pirate treasure. That sounds stupid.
It sounds ridiculous.
I know, but it's real.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it.
Yeah. And it's that type of thing, that kind of, that twist, that reminder that this is serious, Yeah. And you see that a few times in more modern stories. I mean, more like Stranger Things is definitely a good example of that.
Yeah.
But again, because it's current, we now have new jades against it. Like, we're jaded.
Yeah,
and the adults are now more important in the story than just the kids. Like, in Goonies, how many times can you remember any of the parents' names other than the Fratellis?
No.
Right.
No, not at all.
Yet in Stranger Things, there are like 7 or 8 adult characters that are serious members of that story.
I would say 2. But yeah. I mean, there's a handful of other supporting cast, definitely.
That for certain.
And Winona Ryder and I forgot the other actor's name, but the sheriff of the town. Yeah.
But like and that's, I mean, it feels more real. We're not really enjoying the child genre, because the real child genre that we know is being played out in kid series now. Cartoons are doing that, what we used to watch as live action, so it's not getting accepted as live action nearly as much anymore.
Yeah.
And so much as that is sad. Like,
it is.
That we can't have live action shows that aren't, I don't know, made fun of for being a child adventure.
I don't know that that's the problem.
Harry Potter, the movies,
yeah,
were close, but we had child adventure for 2 of them, and then the rest of them were effectively adult adventures. Too serious to be a child adventure.
I mean, the seriousness of it, I don't necessarily know disqualifies it from being the child adventure genre. It's still the children are the only ones who see things clearly enough, and the adults involved are too either busy or clouded by their own involvements.
Skepticism and involvement, yeah.
To see things for what they truly are.
Okay, so before we start tearing apart the whole genre,
right,
because we're going to do it anyways, let's actually step into some of this as we broke it down, because I think you did a great job of organizing the thoughts of the sheet, and I don't want to completely destroy that into just us rambling for the next hour and a half.
And I do want to real quick just note, Knox in the Box in the live chat, I do see your comment about the ineptitude of the adults involved, and we will get there because
that is important.
It is a defining characteristic in the genre.
Yep.
And we'll get there.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So let's talk a little bit about that genre then.
Okay.
So what kind of defines the child adventure genre?
So one of the things that I brought up, I know multiple times in previous shows when we talk about setting, is scope. In almost every sense of it, the child adventure series are always having a tight scope. It is what the kids can physically see. So even though they might move through different areas, like, Harry Potter moves through a lot. Like, they move through it. But even with that, it's still, each one of those areas is very tightly scoped. Really, it's all about the kids. Who's friends with those kids. It is a high school setting, if you will, or a school setting. So you're only dealing with maybe like a handful of people and some parents that you know the names of. So it's really easy to immediately say, these are the players involved and these are the authorities involved. Whether they're antagonists or protagonists, we don't know. But they are the authorities involved. So everybody knows everybody's name. You know all the locations. I mean, I put the point of Fellowship of the Rings where Samwise says, if I take one more step, this is the farthest I've ever been from home. That takes it from a child adventure into a full-on adventure, right? Because when a kid thinks about that scope like changes. Like when you walk into the grocery store, the adults there know who you are. They know your parents.
Yeah.
Like that's a fear in your mind as that character of like, I'll get seen, kind of a thing. And you know the names of the bullies. You know the names of the popular people. You know the people who can get you things.
Yeah.
All of those things are known. It's a very tight knit, scope.
Yes.
And for that, it's very identifiable, Nothing ever feels like it's just acceptable when it steps in from the outside. And that's what I'm saying is that because you know everything, the moment that a black helicopter flies over,
you're like, things have changed.
Right.
Yeah.
It is that poke that comes into the bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the finger that shows up in the ant farm and you're like, "Oh Lord, God has stepped in," kind of a thing.
And just as in that it is small in scope from the standpoint of the cast of characters, it's also small in scope from the standpoint of the actual physicality of it.
Traditionally, yeah.
Traditionally. So, I picked up the core book for the game Kids on Bikes, which, spoiler alert, we're going to be doing a system spotlight on.
Yeah, we'll tear that down
relatively soon.
Real soon.
But in the introduction to it, it talks a little bit about the setting.
Yeah.
And it says, just out of the way enough that the location is isolated from the day-to-day city life, but not so far that the FBI/black helicopters, etc. can't be there in an hour.
Always the case. That always needs to be necessary. And again, you see that a lot more in the cartoon genre than we do in, like, except for Stranger Things, which is a great example. Strangely enough, small town, but there just happens to be a military complex just a little ways away.
Yeah, sure. Well, also, and again, we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, because this is not only a role-playing game, but also a television series on Amazon.
Yeah.
Tales from the Loop.
Yeah. I've not looked at that yet at all, so I'm coming at it very fresh.
It's very slow paced. It's almost like Stranger Things ASMR.
Oh,
but
okay,
it's almost zen in its pacing. But I thought it was very well put together. It's Sean. It wasn't moving fast enough for Sean, but I might give the rest of the season a look on my own time.
Okay.
But that and like the movie Steven Spielberg and who's the lens flare guy that did Star Trek? J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, Abrams. Yeah, okay.
Did Super 8.
Yes,
which was another phenomenal child hero.
Totally forgot about that.
Child adventure story.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's those types of stories though, where like I said, when the weird things happen and the authorities just show up. You've got that fundamental shift in, like, we used to be a small, quiet town.
Yep.
And when the authorities show up, we knew things went. I mean, hell, look at E.T.
Oh,
one of the original, like.
Yeah.
Elliot
very much.
is the main protagonist of the story. He's
again started out with D&D.
Yeah.
Best way to go. But at the same time, like, one of the things that I think is really quintessential is the availability of technology.
Absolutely.
Now,
and this is why I don't think you see a lot of these stories nowadays, and why I think a lot of the stories you do see are set in a retro setting.
Which is funny. I'm wearing my Gravity Falls PJ pants while I'm doing this right now because I love Gravity Falls, and I think if anybody wants really good storytelling, go ahead and watch it all the way through, beginning to end. Don't stop. You'll want to. Don't stop.
Can't stop. Won't stop.
But one of the things about it is literally the opening shots of it are the kids being sent to their grandpa's place, or their uncle's place, their great uncle, which is in Gravity Falls for the summer. So their technology is taken from them. They're given packs to go, and they're sent to his cabin.
Yeah.
But it's that stripping of technology and sending them to this new location that helps set that in place. They're not in a different time period. They're right now. People have cell phones up, but they're in the middle of but nowhere, Oregon, right? And there's no cell phone signal. It's a little know-nothing town that has a mystery spot, effectively. Yeah. And that's all they know. But when they get there, strange things are afoot.
It's all about isolation.
Correct.
And it's all about removing your ability to instantly communicate things, your ability to research things on the internet.
Yeah.
The world has become a much smaller place since technology moved forward. Yeah. And you don't have that sort of isolation in the age of cell phones and high-speed 5G internet everywhere. Yeah. You know? And so I think, you know, a lot of these childhood stories, they take place in the 80s. Before that tech boom ever took place. You've got libraries you can research at. You can you can pore over microfiche. Yeah. If that's your thing. Yeah. But, you know, in periodicals and whatnot. But, nobody has a cell phone.
Your instant communication is your walkie-talkies with your friend.
Exactly.
Which crackle and, like, you may not be able to hear from.
Exactly. You know? One of your friends is a ham radio nerd.
Yeah, and talks to a few people in, like, I don't know, Alaska, and, like, gets weird radio stations from Mexico, you know?
And sings never-ending story songs.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, such a good scene.
Yeah, but, I mean, that's the whole thing is that it's designed to pull it back. Now, could you do that in a more contemporary story? Sure. You could add in, like, parental locks and your parents taking your phones from you, or only giving you, like, a flip phone, so you gotta tap through every message you're getting. Sure. So the messages are simpler.
And there's other ways, too, like, you know, maybe the supernatural thing that's happening screws with the cell phone waves or whatever, you know.
For that period of time.
For that period of time, yeah, sure. So, like, you know, you're not always isolated, but now you are because the weirdness caused it.
Right, and it's changed everybody in town. Like, you know, it's close into the end of summer, and suddenly, like, the solar flares that just flared up knocked out all you know, you can't text, and cell phones are barely working, you know, so everybody all the kids in town are pissed off about that, right? Yep. You know, and the internet already stinks as it is, you know, because you're a rural city, but yeah, you know, ever since cell phones are around, it made it a lot easier, so now homework's harder, everything's hard. That's literally the beginning of any good story right there, you know? Yeah. But
and then the one thing that I love is the intersection between low tech and small scope,
which is
the name of the name of the role playing game,
Kids on Bikes.
Yeah, is that the scope in scale size of the town is basically no more than the kids can get from one end of the town to the other on a bicycle in an hour. Yep. And you, like, again, hearkening back to, like, Goonies. Yeah. I mean, you saw them riding around on their dirt bikes all the time in that. You know?
Lost Boys just came up.
Oh, yeah. You can't stand about Santa Carla, all the damn vampires. Exactly.
No, but that's another perfect example is the moment you step outside of that grid, the moment you do something, you're now in a gray area. You're in trouble. You've gone to, the street lights have gone off, and I think that's part of it as well is that, like, there's timing that's included that brings that scope down.
Right.
You know?
But the important part is it all brings it down to the scale of children. You know, is that children are concerned about how far they can ride their bike because they don't have a car. Yeah. Children are concerned with the adults that have, you know, just the immediate adults that are authorities in their lives. Yeah. Because they don't know anybody else.
Yeah.
You know, they're concerned with, just the technology that they have in front of them because they don't have access to anything else. You know, kids don't have their own bank. Well, I guess nowadays kids have cell phones.
Sometimes.
I don't know. I don't have kids, but,
they do.
You know, but they do.
They do.
But they do.
They do.
But it all brings it's all focused around bringing it down to the scale and scope of what children can actively participate in.
But not just participate in, but that they're the heroes of.
Exactly.
Because
and that's the final crucial component.
Right, you said it yourself. The adults are too worried, too busy, that mundane life for them every day is already too hard that they're not even noticing.
Yeah.
It's beyond them. They don't believe the kids.
I gotta worry about paying the bills, and I gotta worry about taking your sister to band practice, and I've got to finish this deadline for work. I don't have time to worry about, what is this you're going on about? Pirate gold in a cave?
Like, literally, they're about to invade another country.
Go play.
Yeah. That's fine. Just be home by 7, okay?
Right. Be home when the streetlights come on.
Yeah, when the streetlights come on, because we don't have cell phones right now. Get your butt back here.
Yeah.
Otherwise your mom's gonna be angry.
Yeah.
And then it's they're still people. And they're more people. These child heroes are almost more of a person than what we're used to seeing in normal heroes. Mm-hmm. Because they have fears, they have desires, they have challenges. But they're fighting at a much fiercer level because the stakes for them are higher. It's an effect on their world. The idea of a bully stepping in and stopping something from happening suddenly becomes super important.
Oh yeah.
Footloose. We can't dance. Oh no. And that's a thing. But it's a representation of something greater. And even then, they were almost adults. They were coming to that age. It's the whole coming of age concept.
Yeah.
But it's that the fears become much stronger.
Sure.
They come much faster too.
Well, you're tiny little balls of hormones when you are that age,
Yes.
Child to teenagers. And I think, you combine that with, seeing the world with fresh eyes. The adults a lot of times in these stories are, jaded.
Oh,
in
so
a lot
much.
of ways.
So much.
So the great thing about child adventure stories is the sense of, we talked about childlike wonder.
Mm-hmm.
And, what does it really mean?
Yeah.
It means seeing the world with a pair of fresh eyes for the first time, experiencing not only, obviously the exhilaration of whatever the adventure going on is, be it a monster or be it some weird occurrence or pirate gold in a cave somewhere and the Fratelli gang hot on your trail.
Yeah.
But also, discovering that the party's rogue is a girl and kind of pretty. And what if we kissed under the organ trap that
Yeah, or the one that got me from the new revision of Voltron, where it was just like the one person coming out like, I'm actually a girl. Yeah, we've all known that. What? Yeah, we've all been fine with that. I mean, you went to the bathroom. We figured it out pretty quick. But they were in this huge fear, and suddenly it's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody's cool with it, and they're connected, and they're friends. Mm-hmm. That kind of a thing where those fears and those experiences, that first kiss, that first time driving a car, that...
Can your feet even reach the pedals?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like, do you know what you're doing? Not a clue.
Floor it! What does that mean? I don't know. It just means go fast.
Yep. And that's the thing is that when you're dealing with those first time problems, that first thing of like, we have to jump a car. Okay, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
All right. And like heavy gloves that are clearly the wrong size,
Yep.
and huge jumper cables, maybe multiple sets of them even. Like, I think this is how it works, and there's sparks and everything, and then it starts, they're all like, yeah! Now what? Drive away! Like, are we supposed to disconnect it? Oops! That kind of a thing, It's that connection point. Now, I can kind of relate to this, and I'm going to throw one thing to people. So if you're having a hard time trying to get back to your childhood, back to those first moments and those butterfly things, I'm going to ask, do you own a house, or do you do repairs? And have you never done them before? Because that first time you fix something that you've never fixed before...
You look at that leaky pipe and you're like, welp, time to shotgun some YouTube.
But the thing is that when you get it fixed, when it works, that moment right there, capture that in your mind again.
Yep.
And remember that feeling of utter joy that you're like, I'm a god. That's childhood right there.
That's childhood.
That is what we're talking about right there. That's that fresh eyes of discovery, conquering something, and then immediately feeling like a god.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the quintessential moment.
And that's, I think, like, yes, absolutely. Like, finding discovery of yourself.
Yes. Because you find that within
thing.
there.
But, but also, like, not only finding your own true strengths, okay, finding out that, like, you can repair pipes. Like, that's a skill you have now, but also, like, as a child, you exist in a world where adults are telling you who you are,
all the time.
Think, like, it's a quintessential plot line in Finding Nemo, You think you can do these things, Nemo, but you just can't. But who's holding him back?
Just the one
Marlin,
person. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, his dad.
Exactly. So, and then when Nemo goes out on his own and he discovers he can do these things, the only reason he couldn't do them is because Marlin was telling him he couldn't.
Right.
He's being overprotective. Who you can or can't be, who you should or shouldn't be. You're gonna grow up to be a doctor, just like your father, just like your father's father. But Dad, I really want to do music. No, go back and study because you need to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Kids exist in those environments.
Yeah.
And so the child adventure is a great place for telling stories about children who are striking out on their own and doing the things that adults said they couldn't do, said they shouldn't do, and said they didn't have the strength to do.
I think that's a beautiful way of doing it. And I think that ties directly into how to run the game, but we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get to that. So let's talk about a few systems that exist.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of systems that exist. I was very surprised by how robust this genre was.
It's a lot bigger. I looked at some of the ones that you had on the list here. There are a lot of others because beyond this, I found another probably 15.
Oh, yeah.
That are much lighter. Rules are super light, but they feel much similar to the other ones in the Powered by Apocalypse kind of design.
What we are giving you here is a sampler platter and not a definitive list.
Nor are these things that we can say we highly recommend or don't recommend. They're all different.
Yeah.
They all have much like every other system, they have different feels because they fit to the setting that they were kind of framed for.
Correct.
So, Kids on Bikes we are going to do.
And Kids on Brooms.
Yeah. They're similar.
Which is the, I suppose, Harry Potter adjacent...
It's the child magic system.
The child magic system. Thank you, yes.
So you can totally do that. Within that, we are going to do a full review on that. Monster Hearts,
is a Powered by the Apocalypse game.
Yep.
And by Buried Without Ceremony.
Yes, it's the messy lives of teenage monsters.
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
If you're a Critical Role fan, you may have already had some experience with this game system. They did a Monster Hearts one-shot.
That's wonderful.
Called Cinderbrush. And it was really good.
Yeah.
There's Tales from the Loop, which I mentioned earlier. That's actually by Free League Publishing.
Okay.
Who also made the Alien RPG that we liked so much.
Okay.
It actually uses a similar system, but obviously without like the stress mechanic and xenomorphs.
Right. Of course.
The system is very, pretty rules light, pretty quick. And pretty forgiving. And like I said earlier, it is an actual show on Amazon Prime. That heavily leans into the aesthetics and feel of the game.
Yep.
So, if you want to know a little bit more about Tales from the Loop and you have Amazon Prime, give the show a check out. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Little Fears I did hear about.
Okay.
That's Key 20 Publishing. Because it's a horror game that has the boogeyman in it. Like the design of that. And it made me immediately think when I started looking at it to Little Monsters. The movie. Movie. Which I believe is the one with, Adam Savage when he was a kid. Where he ends up going under his bed.
Oh, wow.
With a monster and ends up in the monster world.
Okay.
And literally ends up at the end of the movie basically running through to try and make it before the sun rises, and he ends up in, I want to say California, from New York to California or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous ending. But again, it's very much the child adventure. But it's that very real fear of the boogeyman. Masks, we've talked about. That's part of the Apocalypse Magpie games with teenage superheroes. And it's less about the hero's powers and more about their life. Mm-hmm. And their interactions with that life. With what life is like with the mask off. Yeah. And I think like I've heard that masks can get a little dark. It can. It very much can. Because like very very much like if you saw Invincible, the cartoon series based on the comic, I guess. There are, young teenage superhero teams in that, and it gets pretty grisly with them. And I think masks, from what I understand, can have a lot of the same sort of feels to that. Right. Soon also, Masks is by Magpie Games. Yes. Who made Apellion, a dragon story. That we did a system spotlight on not long ago. Yes. But also there was a recent Kickstarter, very successful Kickstarter for them. They got the license to do the Avatar: The Last Airbender game. Yes. It's also going to be powered by the Apocalypse game, but also I think very much fits into the child, adventure I think it can.
Genre.
I think it very much can. Bubblegum Shoe, which is Evil Hat, and that's the child detective game. Yes. Which I think
Bubblegum Shoe, I thought was a great name.
And Changeling you put on here, and I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, Changeling the Dreaming. I didn't understand this game. Okay, when I was big into White Wolf, I did not understand this game. And the Changeling as a game has changed a lot in the New World of Darkness and such like that.
Very much so.
But as it was published back in the 90s, when it was Changeling the Dreaming by White Wolf Publishing, set in the World of Darkness, but the reason it goes on the child adventure genre is because when you look at it, so all the characters are fae spirits born into human children, essentially, and so they're kind of caught between two worlds: that of the dreaming, of Arcadia, where the fairies are from, and here in the mundane world. Right. And they subsist; their fairy souls subsist on dreams and hope and inspiration and wonder. And how the game actually ends up playing out is, that sort of childlike wonder essentially acts as a power source, almost a source of magic you can tap into, in a very literal but also metaphorical sense. And so it's not terribly uncommon for, first off, like your 20-year-old character is severely over the hill for a changeling. Very much so, yeah. You're practically already giving into the banality of the adult world. Yep. And it's not terribly uncommon for your 20-year-old character to have to bend the knee to a 6-year-old who is actually a very high-powered she-priestess, basically, who could essentially obliviate you with a snap of her fingers. She's that powerful in magic. Right. She's 6. Yeah. But she's also your liege, so, Suck it up. And it was a really interesting take on the genre that I really liked. One of our mutual friends, Erica, is very, very huge into Changeling. I distinctly, to this day, I can still remember the original Changeling spines. And they all matched up like a big glass window. Beautiful. On your bookshelf. It was a beautiful thing to see them all together, and I've only known a few people who had all of them stacked up, and you could look at them. I think they did. Yeah. It was beautiful. It really was. Really cool. Was. But, as you can see, though, the child adventure, storytelling spans all genres. You've got some horror games in there. You've got some superhero games. You've got some just straight up detective. You've got some sci-fi. Yeah, there's, all sorts of stuff in there. Yep. But I think what kind of makes these separate from their core genre is like we talked about earlier, is kind of a scaling back in scale. Okay, so in these games generally, and I say generally because I think Little Fears is a game. It's a horror game. Ergo, it won an award for most disturbing and controversial game of 2001.
Yeah, it's the dread of children's games.
It is the dread of kid games. So, with some certain exceptions in there, like, the worst that's going to happen to your character is, like, you get detention.
Mm-hmm.
You get knocked out, maybe. You might get kidnapped by the baddies, like the Fratelli gang,
Yep.
Which, at that point, changes the story. It gives you a chance to escape or foil their plans from inside their base rather than outside.
Right.
You might get caught by the authorities and returned to your parents.
Very much so.
Look who I caught crawling around in the bushes outside the building.
Right.
And then, inevitably, shortly thereafter, you get grounded by your parents.
You did miss one.
What's that?
We could die, or worse, be expelled.
Yeah.
And that right there, that frames that view. I did think of one more. Bill and Ted's.
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
I think it touches upon it.
I don't think so at all.
Okay.
I think they're rambunctious teenagers, but I don't think it fits into the child adventure genre at all.
Okay.
I would fight you on that one.
Okay.
Now, likewise, your characters are also not going to cause lethal situations.
Oh God, no.
Now, unless it's quote-unquote, capital T, capital M, the monster.
Right.
That needs to be defeated. Then you can whoop its ass.
It's the bait evil. You can't touch it.
Yeah, it's the thing from the upside down.
Yeah.
Of course we're going to
the
eradicate.
Nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
It's the nothing. Of course we're going to fight it.
Yeah.
You can punch bullies. You can tie the shoelaces of the sheriff together. You can let the air out of his tires. You can even whack him with a shovel in the face and knock him down.
Yep.
Maybe break his nose.
Yep.
Typically, you're not going to kill anybody.
No.
Now, the thing that I really loved, there's another podcast I listened to, I think I've mentioned a couple times, called Savage Interludes. It's all about the Savage World series.
Yeah.
And they were, Tracy Sizemore, was talking about using, Savage Worlds to build a Harry Potter series. Specifically, not just trying to, mimic a generic, children in a magic school thing, but like deliberately was going for Harry Potter, right? And, mentioned how they took how she took the fighting skill and the shooting skill off the sheets. Entirely. Because, quote, it's not the type of game.
Right.
It's not a fighting game. It's not a shooting game. You do those things to try to hurt people. You do those things to try to kill people. And that's not something you do in Harry Potter.
Right.
You cause mischief.
Right.
So, those were wrapped together into a mischief skill.
Makes sense.
Are you going to be a little rapscallion and cause some mischief? Fight the bullies? Fine. Roll mischief.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
And I think that embodies, I think, what we're going for here in the child adventure genre,
Yeah, I would definitely say that, but it doesn't take away from the darker themes. You can still have those dark moments, where mortality or lethality is felt, where you have that edge of concern, where dread comes into play, and it is then managed, mitigated, and moved on from. Usually those, any time that we would normally make a hard move in a traditional adult sense, it still applies within, but those moments of those hard moves now can be scaled to something simpler.
Exactly.
Like Stand By Me, finding a dead body.
Oh, it's huge.
It's huge. It's ridiculous. Oh my God, what is that? Like, how do we do someone pulled a gun. Oh my God. Everything stops. Someone was just had a death spell cast at them by one of the bad guys. Oh my gosh.
Right.
This is serious.
It's like the moment where Cedric Diggory is killed. Yeah. It's definitely like a hard turn point in the story where you're like, oh crap, stuff just got lethal.
Yeah. Someone's bike goes over the edge of the cliff.
Who'd have thought the Death Eaters would kill somebody,
Exactly. You feel that level of mortality very differently as a child. It is harsh.
Let me interrupt you just briefly, and I'm going to ask a question to the live chat here. Knox, the longish comment you just made a while ago that's getting the hug emojis, do you mind if I read that out loud? Because I'd like to address it, but not if...
Not if you don't want to.
Not if you don't want me.
We're fine with that.
It's a comment of
very
personal nature, and I want to make sure it's okay to address.
Yeah. Although we do appreciate that you brought it up in the live chat with the rest of the group, and you feel good with the community.
Thank
We're cool
you very
with that.
much for sharing that, though.
And we'll give you a minute to think about it. But yeah, that whole feeling that that you're dealing with, you might be dealing with, romantic topics, you know, like sex even in some cases, drugs, you know, darker, considerations within there of peer pressure becomes a huge part of that. Becoming an adult, being forced to make decisions that are outside of your framework, making decisions between what's legal and what's not, let alone like whether or not you should be out past 9.
Well, there's also like, I mean, like we mentioned that masks can get kind of dark because it's a little bit like there's almost a child soldier trope to it of like your superheroes out there putting your bodies on the line and fighting these super heroic things, but like you're just kids. And I remember seeing a comic a while back with Superman finding out Shazam's secret identity.
Was a child, Billy Batson.
Yeah. And I remember him just looking Billy Batson in the eye and just being like, who did this to you?
Right.
Like, you don't belong. I don't care if you turn into an adult when you're Shazam. Like,
you don't.
You are not an adult.
Yeah.
This is not good. You are not okay.
Yeah.
And, like, I think going and fighting the wizard that gave him his powers or something. But yeah, no, I mean, like, it took a dark turn of, like, when you think about Shazam, that's kind of messed up.
It is. It's
a little messed up.
It is. I mean, at the same time, you're like, wow, that's really cool. But at the same time, like, you still have to manage all of that. Like, all of the feelings that go along with that. And that's critically hard. Like, when a villain knows you won't kill because you haven't, because it's not in you, because that's not something you can do as a child, you know, that puts a hard spin on things.
Yeah.
And then when you have to, now they own you. Now they can twist that knife.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember a lot of the Robin/Nightwing stories that wrapped around that concept.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can
of
imagine.
Killing and managing who you are at that point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I know Monster Hearts can get a little dark.
Yes.
If you delve into the whole, like, sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the high school party scene.
Okay.
And again, my experience with that is really only from the Cinderbrush one-shot that the Critical Role did.
Right.
But yeah, it was definitely an adult story being told about teenagers.
Yeah.
You know, they ended up at a rave at one point, and, you know, things like that were going on, so.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of where we move from what the feel of the story is and making sure that the players are connecting with it at the right level.
Yeah.
You know, there is no do your worst. You know, when the guy comes over with a pair of scissors, you know, a pair of wire cutters to your finger, you know, you have no constitution. It's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're 12.
You're 12. I'm sorry.
You know,
it's Chunk.
It's Chunk, yeah.
I ate the cookie, and then one time I blamed it on my brother when he did it, but it was really me. he literally says, he confesses to everything.
It's amazing. So I do want to read the comment out loud, that Knox in the Box made. He did give his consent to do so in the live chat, and I thank you very much for that. So Knox says, it just kind of pointing back to his own avatar and says, "Gay kid. Childhood was terrifying and experienced in a solitude where true thoughts and feelings were kept to self and shame was felt. Adulthood was much more freeing and mobile. I wouldn't even know how to roleplay an innocent and adventurous childhood I never had in the first time around. Not to be a downer, and you don't need to address this comment, it's just a real problem I have." And I fully understand.
Yes, 100% agree.
I know you know I understand as a transgender woman myself, and a proud and very out bisexual woman, had a lot of the sort of same awkwardness in my in my youth and stuff like that, and a very painful relationship with that youth as well. What I can say is this. Is that don't look at the child adventure genre as an opportunity to emulate an idyllic childhood that you but think of it as giving you the chance to have a childhood that never was. You
Okay.
know?
Okay.
You can use this space to tell the story where you can punch the bully you never got to.
Yeah, agreed.
Where you could live the truth that you never got to. You could have the accepting friends and play that gay kid. Play the gay kid with all the same fears and doubts and hell, even have that bully, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
But this time around,
It's different.
your kids on bikes and your little gang of kids on bikes not only are going to go get the pirate treasure,
Yeah.
but when that bully rears his head and calls you an ugly word, they're going to beat him up.
Yeah.
And this time, you're going to have friends around you that support you.
Or you're going to get him in a different way.
Exactly.
One of the ones that I can come back to is I had a lot of friends who had very hard childhoods. Mm-hmm. I will say this in the traditional sense. They had abusive families, they had broken families, they had families that weren't very supportive at all, or almost non-existent. So they were raising themselves and their kin. So did they have the same kind of childhood? No. But I know they also understood that they were part of that childhood. You would have the naysayers of the group of the friends. You'd have those people who are like, no, I can't. I've got to get home. Well, why do you have to be so hard? Because my dad's gonna, hit me. Or my dad's gonna do this, or my mom is gonna, end up being the one in trouble because we're not home on time. Mm-hmm. Like, those are the topics that Mask challenges you with that kind of a storyline.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember all of those moments in my childhood of coming to realizations and connecting with my friends who did not have the experience that I had growing up.
Yeah.
And helping them through stuff like that. And that's what this is about. I mean, in all honesty, and I'll flat out say it, the child genre is way more role-playing and trauma-inducing than the traditional fantasy role play.
Yeah.
You will get to topics that will make you cry way faster in this. Like, infinitely faster. Because you are dealing with those topics and that trauma that are in your own head. Mm-hmm. Or you saw and you can connect with. Mm-hmm. So, don't feel that you have to try and emulate, like you said, or mimic or fake.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, exactly.
You can totally theatricize who you could have been. Like, if you want to be the jock, the big dumb jock, who likes who likes this non-sportsy girl who's on the pom-pom squad, and you pick on your little brother every once in a while, but really you deep down love him. And then come to find out that, like, maybe your little brother is pretty cool, and that girl is not an airhead, and you're not as great as you thought you were. But you're strong enough to help them.
Yeah.
It's coming to those kinds of things, and that's part of role play. That's part of the twist on theater that does that. So
Knox actually had a really great response for us. He says, wait, I can be that gay kid from School of Rock? You're tacky and I hate you.
100%.
100%.
Do it.
In fact, like I said, I was reading through the core book for kids on bikes, and one of the things it does say basically in there is like, yeah, it's supposed to be set like in the 80s where, modern technology hasn't made the world a much smaller place yet to facilitate these types of stories, but that doesn't mean that we need to fall on tropes and language and attitudes that were common in the 80s.
Not at all.
If we can imagine a creature of darkness, oozing out of a hole between realities, then we can imagine a world with a lot less homophobia in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Racial bias, homophobia, all that kind of stuff can go to the side.
Exactly.
Exactly. A black man can be sheriff.
Just not needed.
Yeah.
In these stories.
Yeah. And, I think it's helpful. Mm-hmm. I think it sets the tone without setting the stage, which is wonderful. So.
But, again, discuss it with your storyteller. If that's something you do want to confront in the story.
Yeah.
By all means.
Yeah.
By all means.
Throw it in there.
But, alright, so, let's talk a little bit about, role-playing. God, we're running really far behind on this.
I don't care. This is fun.
So how do you role-play a kid?
Okay. I'm gonna point at the screen so that you can go pause that so that we don't actually get a roll off on this. And I'm gonna start in on this one because this was an area that I didn't think I had a lot of. Yeah, go ahead. See if it. Perfect. That should do. We'll come back to it. We'll get it fixed.
I don't know. Rob's a technology guy.
Yeah, you did fine. I didn't think I had a lot of thoughts on this, but I ended up having a lot more than I ever expected when I started writing. Yeah. Because I quickly started going back to theater models and shows and things like that. One of the biggest things that I think is a difference between how we act in our traditional fantasy, sci-fi, I'll use the term adult roleplay.
Sure.
And kid play is that kids think in the now. Mm-hmm. They're not thinking 12 steps ahead. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh God, we need to go help so-and-so. They're not thinking, well, what did they do for me? And what will this mean? And is this going to affect this relationship? And how are these? No, none of that is. Like, the planning
They're in danger. Go.
Exactly. Like, but I thought you didn't like this guy. He goes to our school. We should help him.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go do this. Kind of a thing. And that's how, like, in almost every one of the stories, like, even the bullies turn a little bit. Because they're not going to let the people they pick on get picked on.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Mm-hmm. Like, it's those kinds of things. So
I stole your lunch, man. It doesn't mean I want you dead.
Exactly. That's a huge difference there. And what's funny oftentimes is because of those gut instincts, the moments that you step beyond that and you think even 2 steps beyond, everyone looks at you funny. Like, are you an adult?
Right.
You can.
No, guys, we have to do this because the wide-reaching implications of it succeeding are too bad.
Huh?
Holy crap! You're a grown-up. Yeah.
But that's the thing is that, and it doesn't say that the kids aren't smart.
Oh no, kids are brilliant.
They're way more brilliant than you'd think,
and way more observant than you think.
Yes.
You think that kids don't, but it's more a function of that they don't have the language and the tools to interact with the world on the same way that we do. But it doesn't mean that they don't understand what's going on.
Right.
And doesn't mean that they don't see what's going on.
Right. And they see it at a root level.
Yeah.
Dad is stressed. Okay. They're not looking at the fact that the world's saying or COVID's going on or anything like that. All they see is dad being frugal with money. Money is the issue with the dad's root stress, which is probably the truth.
If we get dad lots of money, everything gets better.
Or they see the pile of paperwork waiting on the counter. We go back to Goonies, like the house is going to get sold. Like they're going to have to sell the house. They don't know why. They don't know anything about taxes or what's going on in the community. Like, none of that is important, right? What's important to them is the fact that they're going to lose their house and they're all going to have to move to different places. Mm-hmm. That sucks.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
You'll never see your friends again.
Right. But, like, you don't have to write more story. Like, there's nothing else.
That's it. That's enough motivation right there. Go.
So, in that sense, they're smart enough to see the root of everything.
Yeah.
And that's the simplicity. That's the beauty of it all, is that it cuts down all of the other layers that you don't have to think about.
Absolutely.
And brings it around.
I as much talking about Goonies as I've been doing, wasn't that the main motivation for Mikey wanting to find the treasure, was they were having money problems?
The
to save
town.
the house?
It was to save the house in the town.
Yeah, okay.
Because if I remember correctly, there was a contractor who was coming in that was gonna, like, build something there, and they were buying all the houses.
Yeah, okay.
So, and they had to basically make a decision on it. And either sell the house and move or whatever. Ages are a huge thing.
Huge thing. So when you're a kid, ages feel very skewed.
Very much so.
Okay, so like a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old is practically an adult.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Way more adult.
To a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old is practically an adult.
Very much so.
To a 15-year-old, an 18-year-old is an adult because they can smoke and drive cars.
That is correct.
Right? But of course, all of these people are children to an adult.
Correct. And will be treated equally.
Exactly.
It's the whole, like, stop hitting your brother. Well, he started it. I don't care who started it. You're the older one and you should know better.
Right.
Like that's the level of it, but you're all in trouble, like equally. You're all gonna get slapped the same,
exactly.
like regardless.
Exactly.
And I think that right there is like, But there's also a reference that I think we're missing in this, and that is that at a certain point in the child genre series, the elderly have a different point. So when you see a wrinkled old person who's just sitting there having a conversation in the park, that's someone who knows something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, they're not an adult going to try and stop you, but maybe this person might actually be able to help you a little bit. Because
there's a certain point where you go from being dad to being grandpa.
Yeah.
And grandpa's cool, but dad sucks.
Correct. And I think that's another kind of twist to that whole age thing, is that you see that threshold being crossed, and then suddenly there's a new reference point.
Yep.
Either that or they're the creepy old guy.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The creepy old lady up on the old rickety house
well,
with
I
too
think
many cats.
that also goes back to the whole, like, fairy tale genre of, you know, is it a wise old, you know, lady, the fairy godmother?
Or is she going to stuff us in the oven?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's one or the other.
Or is it Hansel and Gretel waiting to happen?
Right. Whereas everyone else is just like, don't do that. Go to town, you know, follow the rules, you know.
Yep.
So,
alright, so next, kids feel emotions very, very strongly.
Yes.
They're go-go gadget hormones.
Yes. 100%.
And on a personal note, as a transgender woman, HRT does the exact same thing to you.
Yes.
So you got to experience like a couple of years of me being a teenager all over again. Wasn't that fun?
I went through that experience with you. I will say we are still friends. There were times when it was amusing. There were times that it was not.
Yeah.
Someone you hate is your worst enemy.
Worst enemy in your world. Someone you love is your best friend or first crush.
Very much true. Very true. Sometimes both.
Something that you want is the only thing you desire in the whole world.
Oh my god. The most recent one, the Nintendo. Getting a Nintendo. There was a new show.
8-Bit Christmas or something like that? Yeah.
Yes. That right there is a great wrap of that. The single toy, going on a ride, going to your first concert kind of a thing.
Yep.
You know, that is what grinds you into that character, that ownership, you know, or the one thing that you have that's super, like your shoes, your jacket, you know, iconic parts of who you are also a part of that. So that one thing is a huge thing. Like the kid walking around with the leather jacket. Like you knew that kid. Or so-and-so always wore this hat. Like into the ground, you know, the quintessential hoodie, you know, or whatever. Like everybody had their thing. You know, the skateboarding kid, you know, that was a thing. Cause like one kid or a couple kids skateboarded, but there was always one kid with a skateboard to school.
The skateboarder.
Right, right. The BMX kids, you know.
Yep.
So you had a lot of token objects tied to the desires and the identification of people, you know. Peer pressure.
Peer pressure is horrible, but effective.
But very effective. And that's the thing is that
you don't want to be a dweeb, do you? Oh god, I don't want to be a dweeb. We have to do this now.
Cooties.
Yes.
Cooties is an emotional response.
Cooties are real and they kill, folks.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, like literally, I would almost put that down as a poison in any game, like in any kid's game. Cooties. Did you get cooties? Oh, that's your poison. You are no longer
shot where like you do like a weird thing with like your fingers making like a hashtag sort of thing. Like
cootie catchers.
Yeah.
You know, but and like that goes right along with all of the like ritual skepticism that goes in with kids, like their skepticism, like those foldy things where you count the numbers.
Yeah, those were cootie catchers.
Yeah, well, in the fold-outs, like, that was the truth. Whatever was in there was the truth.
Yeah, you had to...
the magic 8-ball would tell you the truth.
Those were legally binding. I mean...
Exactly. Blood bonds. Oh, there's a whole nother one. Bullies.
Bullies are scary.
Bullies are not impossible.
But they're not adults.
No.
And the adults are scary and authority.
Yeah, very much so. And if you could get them to cross the line, you could sometimes catch them in their own game.
Yep.
Yep.
And that means you win.
Yes, you could win that way. But the bonds between friendship were super strong.
Yes.
You know, and the recognition of that everything was tied together was important. The term best friend, you know, meant extra things on top of like just having a friend or knowing someone.
Oh, sure.
You know, oh no, that dude's my best friend. I see him every day. We talk all the time. You know,
you and I are supposed to be best friends. No, Dustin and I are best friends now.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know.
That, oh God, now it's over.
Right.
Till tomorrow, probably.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
kind of a thing.
Yeah, until you return my baseball card collection.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, things that are normal to an adult can feel really cool to a kid. Like going right along, like sneaking out after bedtime.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
you know,
you're out after the streetlights came on.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, taboo. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Building something in secret or out of view of others. Like you've got your secret invention you've got stashed in your closet or under your bed or whatever that your parents don't know you have.
Yep. But that goes along with having stashes, or like things that are your own spaces, like the clubhouses in the woods that you built yourself. You know, or like the old culvert that is no longer a culvert because that road isn't used, but it's still there, so now that's like a little base for you.
Yep,
you know?
Yep. They do all those in Stranger Things. I know, like season 1 of Stranger Things is like chock full of those tropes.
Yep.
Finding an old trunk, a box, a sealed doorway is an adventure all of its own, and that's kind of what I was talking about at the very beginning of the cast here tonight.
Yes,
was like when you were young, man, when you like went out and you found like an interesting thing, you know, hidden behind a tree, and you're like, oh, it's treasure.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's a rusty can.
Yeah.
But
like,
to you, it's treasure, you know?
A whole cloth, like, I remember effectively an adventure starting with one of my friends, because we had found out that when his grandfather had passed, his parents had to collect all the stuff from their house, and it ended up over his garage, which was basically a barn. Mm-hmm. And so all this stuff was stashed up there and just stacked. And he knew his grandfather had some cool stuff. And so we started looking through it. Like, going through some of the stuff. And Mom didn't care. Like, whatever. You know, like, just don't break anything was the whole thing. And, like, you know,
sure.
don't go through. If you find the plates, make sure you pull those out, you know. And we found pictures and journals and notes and keys. And
keys go to locks. Locks hide things that are important.
Keys went to lock boxes at banks.
Oh.
That nobody knew about.
Oh.
And so it opened a whole adventure.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it's things like that. And it was like, did we want to tell the parents about that, or did we want to go figure it out ourselves and maybe somehow get into those lock boxes, you know? And that was, we had no idea if we were going to do that. We didn't, but it was the whole thing of it was that it was its own adventure. Just finding something that simple, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, kids are also full of faults.
Yeah.
You know, and I think letting your vulnerabilities show is kind of key to who you are.
Oh God, yeah. I think we talk about that when we're talking about building characters, is giving them a flaw.
Oh, absolutely.
I think these flaws need to fly.
You need to fly. You know, your asthma, your allergies, your sweet tooth. Are you overprotective? Are you loud? Are you clumsy? Do you have a lisp? Are you
inquisitive?
Are you inquisitive? Yeah.
Like, all of these things are the identification of your character, you know, in any major story, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
And yet there's also the downfall. And I think, like, Mouse Guard does that really well. Is that you have something that drives your character, but at the same time is your flaw. You know? 7th Sea kind of does that to a degree. But I feel like that part is lacking in some adult storytelling. That role play element of, like, my character is driven when it comes to personal gain. Great. I'm going to use that against you as the storyteller. And you're like, oh, you know, but that's a thing. That's something that kids have. Like, you know those people in your lives, and you're like, oh yeah, I knew that kid who loved horses.
Yeah.
Like, more than anything else loved horses.
Yeah.
I knew that kid who had asthma and couldn't do any athletic activities when we were at camp.
That kid whose list of allergies was like 4 pages long, and you just felt like you were going to kill them if you know...
I had many of those problems. But I still did things.
Oh God, I'm eating plain butter on bread.
Yeah.
Am I going to kill you by being near you?
Exactly. But I mean, it's playing into those hindrances that really helps you define who you are as a kid. And helps you kind of ground yourself.
Yeah, sure. All right, so running a game full of kids. We talked about how to play one. Now, how do you run a game like this? You know? Small world, huge impacts.
I have to say this.
Yeah.
Knox, you're rude. if anyone, I'm just going to say this. He opened up a can of worms with this very specific movie that is in the child genre. And if you put that down in the comments, that was rude. You should not have put that in the comments.
Too soon, Knox.
God, probably 20 plus years. Still too soon.
Yeah.
Still too soon.
Was it My Girl?
Yeah, it was My Girl.
My Girl.
My Girl.
Man.
Beautiful story. Still fits within the child genre.
Come back in 8 to 10 days.
All right, so running a game.
Running a game. So small world, huge impacts.
Yes.
Something that is probably trivial to adults is going to be just earth-shattering to children because of the scale of the world of the kids. You know, we mentioned earlier how, like, you don't have the power to affect anything. You've got a bike that can take you wherever you can ride in an hour.
Yeah.
On it, 10 miles at most if you're really going away from home.
Yeah.
So your world is going to be changed very drastically by small things.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, simple things. And, like, I put down a few things here, and they're already too overcomplicated. Mm-hmm. But they're easily identified. The town is demolishing the old train yard to build something, but the kids hang out there.
We can't let that happen. We have to stop them.
Yeah. Timmy's art is on the wall here, and Timmy's gone. He moved away 3 years ago, but this is all we have, The middle school is being removed, and so now 7th through 12th grade is at the high school, and 6th is back in elementary. And you just started 7th grade.
We're high school.
So you immediately go to high school. You thought you were going to be the kings of the school within a year, and now you're not.
Yep.
The concert that was supposed to be just the next town over, which is not that big of a deal, is now completely over an hour away by car. But everyone still has tickets, and nobody knows how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And, do you tell your parents?
Uh-huh.
Will they let you go?
This is like Adventures in Babysitting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your wife brought up Adventures in Babysitting earlier, and this is exactly that type of story,
100%.
We're hitchhiking as kids trying to get to this concert.
Yeah. So that kind of scale changes quickly. Adventure to adventure, your scale changes can be very small. Someone has to move away. And it's the last summer. Something that simple.
Like I said, with such a small scale, one person moving away is a huge change. It's like when your population is 20, that's 5% of the population, you know?
Yeah.
That's practically everyone you know.
What can we do to get Michael's parents to not move,
Right.
You don't know what's
that's
really
mommy, that's Michael, his sister, and his mom and dad. That's 4 people I know.
Who's going to move into that house? We're not even going to know these people. They're going to be weird and different.
Be anything.
They could be aliens.
They could be awful.
And worse yet, and straight up worse yet, someone goes missing. That whole concept of someone going missing is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did they go missing? What happened to them? Well, the parents write it off as, he was out, he was out in the woods and probably just got lost. No, he goes out to a very specific place. Y'all know where he goes. Everybody else goes there too. He wouldn't get lost. He knows it better than anyone. Why did he go away? And then you start pulling the strings of what kids know here and there until you pull together this image of where you think he went, but it's not where the parents should know that he went. Mm-hmm. So you gotta go find him.
Yeah.
And help him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So...
here, do not weigh out all of the consequences.
God, no. We do that in our normal games to our own detriment as storytellers. We run our threads as far as we can, and we're like, okay, well, if the players do this, then this, and then this, but if they do this, then this, and this. Stop it. Your players in this specifically will come up with their own consequences. It's the whole, or worse, we could be expelled.
Yes,
you're
exactly.
No, that totally makes sense. I'm just going to write that down right here.
Mm-hmm.
And when the adult comes in the room, they're going to be like, yes, your group has lost points, for the end of the year, and you all have detention.
Yeah.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, exactly.
You won't have to worry about consequences, because you have to think, the only time you have to think rationally is when an adult is involved. Mm-hmm. And then you can literally change scenes, because guess what? They don't get a choice on that hard move.
Yeah.
The kids just get picked up and moved. They have to accept there's an adult in the room and a hard move just occurred. You know?
Yep.
And sometimes those consequences can be totally unknown. Like, how did you not get arrested? Because the next scene is you in the car with your parents dropping off one of the kids at their parents' houses with your dad talking to their dad over there.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why my kid got your kid involved
You
in any of
don't
this.
know the conversation because it's happening 55 feet away at the front door and they're talking in hushed tones while you're in the car saying goodbye to your friend because they're going to be gone forever.
Yeah. They're going to be grounded until they're 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing, is that the scenes are different. They feel different because those consequences are weighed totally differently, at a totally different. So don't think about it. It's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, contacting authorities, following reasonable guidelines, being frustrated with bureaucracy. These are the adult sides of that theme.
Yeah.
This is why you get the no's. No, you can't. No, you're too young. You don't understand. This is just the way it is. Any of those terms that roll through, just write them down on an index card, keep them off to the side. That's your response to everything.
Mm-hmm.
An adult action should feel slowed in comparison to the kids. Anytime that you are rushing something, that the players are running through something, adults should always feel 2 or 3 steps behind.
Well, yeah, because the adults are the ones that are thinking things through. They're acting essentially calmly and rationally, or maybe acting, taking like I said, a lot of the things into consideration. Oh, what if we do this? There's the implications of this, and I can't just do this.
Right.
Kids don't see any of that, and it's all impulse and hormones.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, we have to do this. It's the right thing. Let's go.
Yeah.
But we're going to get grounded. I don't care. Let's go.
But your scene ends should always be with something rational.
Mm-hmm.
Like they open the final door, like, hey, we're finally going to get away, and they open the cargo door, and there's the sheriff with his flashlight on their face. How did you get here? Your bikes were leaning on the wall outside. I was driving by with my squad car.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. We're in trouble, aren't we? Scene change.
Yep.
That simple. But rules should always be present. Dinner is at 6:30. Make sure you wash your hands. No slouching. Don't talk back. While I'm away, your brother's in charge. Make sure you feed the dog.
Yeah.
These are things that are ingrained. These aren't normal rules that you'd find in any normal fantasy tabletop game, but they're here, and they're real, and they have meaning. It doesn't stop that the world's going to end because some giant monster is coming through a gateway, and the only way to stop it is by going back to Timmy's house and deactivating the thing he created accidentally, But your mom's still going to be upset if you're not home for dinner at 6:30, but
of course she is.
After dinner you'll sneak out at 8:30 and get back to this.
Yeah, extra dimensional being. Eat your mashed potatoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that NPCs should feel less than useful most of the time.
Uh-huh.
Like any of the other supporting people around the player who are the adults or quasi-adults are going to be limiting. They're going to limit their support and availability. And that's because they don't understand.
Yeah. They not only do they not understand, but also, I know you wrote here it's not about limiting support to the players, but it kind of is. Because, in the child adventure genre, it's the child adventure genre.
Right.
Adults have a lot of power that children don't. And the joy of the genre is from the children rising up to the occasion and finding their own strengths in this world and solving this problem themselves without the help of adults.
Right.
So if your NPC adults jump in and become very helpful and become tools that the PCs can use, it kind of takes the agency and power out of the hands of the players.
Right.
Out of the hands of the children. And then it's the children asking the adults for help genre and not the child adventure genre.
But the focus is more upon having the kids be the power source.
Yes.
And that's what I'm really trying to say. It's not just keep limiting. It's encourage them to connect with each other and other kids to make them the power of what's going on and to work around the system, if you will.
And Knox even brings up, too, he says adults by default outshine children because children are powerless. You have to dumb down a lot of the adult cast. And that's true.
Yep, 100%.
And that's true. It's a very tropey genre. It does rely on a persistent idea that every adult you come across is going to be uninterested or unmotivated to help you and more interested in authority and more interested in obedience than they are about actually solving the problem.
Yes.
And that's true. It is tropey. It is probably very unrealistic.
Yep.
But it's one of the main pillars of the genre, and you kind of got to lean into it to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, if we can suspend our belief about monsters and fantasy and magic,
then we can believe that your parents are a little more dismissive than they normally would be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would dare say that if there's one thing you can pull from this and bring it into your fantasy games, is if you want your players to feel more empowered, make the roles of NPCs around them that they reach out for a little dumb, a little more bureaucratic, and less caring of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Aloof, if you will, and unwilling to help. And you will see the same kind of adaptation that we've got to take care of this. They're not going to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
All right, let's get to some questions. It's, we're running super, super late.
We are.
We are.
And Mom will be angry if we're not in bed.
Yes. All right. So, IGJFCF.
Yes.
Charles asks, can role-playing as a child be more emotionally challenging than role-playing as an adult?
I'm flat out going to just say yes.
Yes, absolutely.
We kind of discussed it. I'm not going to go into heavy detail on that. The answer is yes. You're way closer to the trauma.
Yes. Does the age of fictional character have any bearing on what type of violent situations are appropriate or inappropriate to put them in? Is it okay to have a scene where a child is parasitized by an alien worm, physically hit by an adult, or has their skull smashed by an ogre? Those are all pretty dark. I think the child adventure genre that we're talking about is a lot more non-lethal. But again, I think there's a place for those stories.
I think you can, I think in the lethality or horror aspect, you can slide relatively far.
Yeah.
And you can definitely get dark. I mean, let's not say that you can't. I would just say it is unlikely and is not commonplace. But yeah, I think that, it is, to answer your question, does the age of the fictional character apply? I would answer the question, yes. I think it does because the impact changes and the trauma changes. Agreed.
And, is it okay for any of these things to happen? That is entirely between you and your table.
Yeah, I would say 100% be exceptionally clear, and consent is important.
Yes, yeah. These things are very triggering, very touchy subjects and such like that. So 100% talk to your table about this. Maintain consent with your table. And have an X card in play.
Yeah. And also, as the storyteller, ask yourself, why is this important?
Yeah, that's the other thing too.
Yeah,
like
check your story for why.
Why are we smashing?
Yeah, Michael Blade blows up a lot of stuff without people dying.
Yeah,
he could add in literally a lot of chunky salsa, and he does not.
Yeah,
and that makes for different storytelling.
Yes, it does. So, God, did you just compliment Michael Bay?
Yeah, that should say something.
Oof. All right. Does role-playing as a party of children necessitate assessing players' real-life childhood trauma in a session 0?
I don't think you have to assess their trauma.
Yeah, I don't know that assessing is the right word, but I think definitely having a good conversation about boundaries and triggers and what you would like to see and what you would not like to see in the game is important. And again, always maintain that communication with your players. Yeah, it can get, I mean, not everybody had traumatic, we always talk about, like, childhood like it's just the worst thing that's ever happened to a person. And for some of us it was, but like, I don't know. Interesting. It interested me that most of our questions are about childhood trauma.
That should be telling.
It should be telling, yeah. But yeah, no, that's a very good discussion to have
Yeah.
about what you want to include and what you do not want to include in your story during your sessions.
And remember that theme and gameplay is a huge part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like with any game, whether you're playing Heroes or whether you're playing a more gritty game, remember to discuss with your players the types of things that they're going to be involved in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. And what is important? In what important ways is the idyllic childhood fantasy different from actual childhood? I mean, actual childhood is rough and stupid, and you just do what's told you by adults the entire time, and you have bullies, and half your dreams don't come true. Whereas in an idyllic childhood fantasy, you find pirate gold.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about specifically idyllic childhood fantasy, I think it is the Peter Pan,
Peter Pan's a good example.
The chance for success
Yeah.
is nears 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key. It is very heroic. It is very goal and beauty driven.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and everyone wins together. I think there's another aspect of it.
Yeah, I think I really like the childhood stories where the bullies got punched along the way, but they kind of figured out that maybe they shouldn't bully the hero anymore. And maybe grew a little bit because they came to an understanding.
So the question is, what's the message that we've learned from this? So
maybe the real pirate treasure was the friends we made along the way.
Exactly. All right. Overwatch asks, I've played in some campaigns or on some RP servers where individual players gravitate toward playing child characters, while everyone else is playing an adult. Would you allow this? I've done it.
No.
I have done it.
Not for this type of game.
And I would say specifically for child genre, no. If we're talking about an adult game where children are involved, I think you run some risks there.
Was just going to say that.
Because I have done that, and it has been very risky. I've both been in games and been in running games where there has been a quote-unquote child involved or a childlike individual involved.
Yeah.
And I will say they were very challenging.
We spent 20 minutes belaboring the point about how the rules are much different for children than they are for adults.
Mm-hmm.
And especially on the scope of lethality and such like that.
Or they should be.
Or they should be, yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you have a story about adults with a child involved, the scope and scale of that lethality, of that involvement and such like that is going to be scaled around the adult and not the child. And the child is going to be in extreme danger.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you're playing all children, you can tell a story about all children for all children.
Right.
With children rules.
Yep.
And that's
with that understanding.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think, to answer his question, does it affect how you'd run your campaign?
100%.
2,000%.
2,000%, yeah. How do you develop your storyline for a mix of both adult and child characters in the same setting?
Remove lethality, number one.
Yeah.
And make it less, make the stories more about the group and getting through a group scenario.
I would say focus also on the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
That's what I was kind of saying, is that you're focusing on how the group is interacting and how the group is succeeding with each other, and less about how they're progressing. The story is a progression at that point.
Yeah, I would say, like, for a mixed adult and child group, where you have, I think that would be a very specialized type of story for me. Like, I would be specifically that's almost one-shot territory for me. You know, that's not something I would run as a campaign. That would be something like, okay, you know, you're a family. You play the son, you play the daughter, you're the mom, you're the dad. And here's the circumstances you're in. Here's your goal. We're gonna play it as one shot.
Yeah, if you've recently seen Mitchell's versus the Machines, that's a campaign I would run. I would run that as a campaign. So again, if you watch something like that, you're going to, if you've seen it, it's a story about a family having struggles and the world around them having challenges that they can have an effect on. And I think that's a perfect example, and dissecting that would be a really good way of looking at how to run a good adult child story.
I think so, yeah.
Because it makes it about the struggle between them and then the world around them being a event that is occurring.
Yes. Yes.
Last of Us is kind of a feeling in the same way. Much darker.
Much darker.
Much darker, but again, still about the characters.
Yes.
So.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so that wraps it for questions. Our next week's topping, yes.
Good
Next
pizza.
week's topping is strawberry. Our next week's topic is going to be the first Wednesday of the month, so we're going to be doing our Storyteller 101. Third installment of that is going to be choosing the right system for your game. We've talked about where you get your ideas from, what to do with those ideas when you get them, and now we're rolling right into systems. So you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave, listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave, and join us up on our Discord. You can shoot us some questions, join the conversation there, and you can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank all of our Patreon members who join us every single week within our our live show chat. You can join that too if you go to our and join our Patreon. But our named members, Knox in the Box, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion, Vedran, and Hulavu, we just particularly like to thank with their support every month. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/Arcane Anthems. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Mid-Air Machine. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org.
Big shout out as always to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving us and staying with us and supporting us. All of our friends who've sat with us at our tables over the years to give us these great stories to share with you. And you, every single one of our listeners. We love you so much.
Love you guys.
Good night.
Good night.